So this is going to be the first video in my series looking at the ACT English exam, and in particular we're going to be looking at punctuating complex sentences. So these sentences, they'll involve, I don't know, perhaps a comma, a semicolon, a full stop or a colon, and often these will be quite long sentences involving multiple clauses or phrases. Now it is very important that you view this series of videos in order, so if you're using the playlist function on YouTube, you're going to go from number 1 through to the end, hopefully. Reason being is that each successive video is going to be building on concepts from the previous video in the playlist. So I do recommend that you go through in order, and I also recommend downloading a copy of my notes. They're available on my website. So after each little mini section on this video, there will be a little exercise as part of my notes, so you can kind of check your own progress. Okay, so not only is this video navigable in terms of it being part of a playlist, it's also navigable in video. So if you have a look at the links at the top, these do correspond to the video description below. So say you want to know exactly what's in part 3 of the video, just pop open the video description below and you'll be able to find out there. This being said, I do recommend you watching the video from start to finish rather than say jump into part 3, just because, as was the case with my playlist, you might miss a vital link and get lost somewhere in the video if you start kind of anywhere that isn't the very beginning of the video. Well, without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to start off by looking at independent and dependent clauses. So if we have a longer sentence that's split up into subsections, if you like, the independent clause is going to be the subsection which can stand alone as an independent sentence, if you like. Whereas the dependent clause, you can't isolate this. This won't be a self-contained sentence by itself. It's best viewed in terms of concrete examples here. So if you take a look at our independent clause, studying is very important. You can put a full stop at the end of this. It does make sense by itself. Whereas our dependent clause, if you want to succeed, you can't capitalise the I here, put a full stop after succeed. That doesn't make sense by itself. It's not a self-contained sentence. One more thing to note about this concept of a clause is that, so a clause differs from a phrase in that a clause will have a verb and then a subject doing that verb, if you like. So here, if you look at, let's take the dependent clause first. If you want to succeed here, our verb is want, and our subject, the thing that's actually doing that verb, is you. In the first sentence, it's slightly more difficult to identify here the noun, if you like, that's actually doing the verb, but here it's actually studying, and our verb is. Okay, so just remember, a verb is a doing word, a noun, which more often than not probably will be the subject of your clause. Noun is going to be a person, a place, or a thing. In this case, it's more of a concept. So studying is the subject of that first clause there. Okay, so this concept of independent clauses, dependent clauses, becomes very important when you're looking at punctuating longer sentences. So here, the ordering of these clauses will determine whether or not you need a comma separating these two subsections. So here, if our independent clause comes before our dependent clause, then no comma is required. So in this case, you have studying is very important. That's our independent clause. And this is followed by, if you want to succeed, our dependent clause. So you notice here, there is no comma in between our two clauses. Whereas if we were to reverse this sentence and we have our dependent clause in front of our independent clause, then we do need a comma. So here, dependent clause first, if you want to succeed, followed by our independent clause. Studying is very important. You notice we do require a comma here. So as mentioned previously, there is an exercise which kind of builds upon these skills, which tests your knowledge. These are available on my website along with kind of full written versions of my notes. Okay, so now we're going to look at punctuating non-essential phrases and clauses which pop up in the middle of a sentence. So a non-essential phrase, a non-essential clause, you can remove it from the original sentence and it's not going to dramatically affect the meaning of the wider sentence. So let's take a look here. So here are independent clause. Remember, this is the clause that can stand alone as a sentence in isolation by itself. Manchester United recently bought Bastian Schweinsteiger. So you can tell this example is a little bit old. That can stand alone as a self-contained sentence. It does make sense by itself. Now we're going to insert this non-essential phrase. So obviously this is referring to Manchester United. Who else would it be referring to? So the best football team in the world. And we're going to stick this in the middle of our independent clause here. So this reads, Manchester United, the best football team in the world, recently bought Bastian Schweinsteiger. So you can see here, I can remove this non-essential phrase, the best football team in the world, and the original sentence, Manchester United recently bought Bastian Schweinsteiger, that still makes sense. Okay, so a non-essential phrase or a non-essential clause, it doesn't dramatically change the meaning of the original sentence. So in punctuating this, you need to stick commas around the phrase or the clause which interrupts the main sentence. That's what we've done here. So just note that you could also use hyphens instead of commas when punctuating this interrupting phrase or this interrupting clause. So you look at the difference between this, what I've done up here with commas, and what we've done down here with hyphens. Exactly the same, but as I said, one uses commas, the other one uses hyphens. Either is grammatically acceptable. So sometimes the interrupting, it won't be the interrupting kind of section of the sentence, if you like. It won't be a phrase, it won't be a clause. It will just be a single word. The word however is a commonly occurring word which does interrupt sentences, and really when you're looking at this, you want to be thinking of it in terms of your natural pauses in your speech. So here again we have the same independent clause, Manchester United bought Bastian Schweinsteiger. If I wanted to stick the word however to slightly change the meaning of the sentence, then it would read Manchester United however bought Bastian Schweinsteiger. So it does slightly change the meaning of the sentence, but again, it is non-essential in that you can remove the word however, and the original sentence, Manchester United bought Bastian Schweinsteiger, that still does make sense. This is why this is kind of non-essential. It interrupts the original sentence, and again, we're going to punctuate this with commas around the interrupting word. Okay, and then you've got another example here. Manchester United consequently bought Bastian Schweinsteiger. So here you can see the use of the word however and the use of the word consequently here. They do change the meaning of the original sentence, but as discussed previously, you could omit either of those and this original sentence up here, it would still make sense. Okay, so important thing here, if you're punctuating something that's non-essential, so be it a word, a phrase or a clause, and it pops up in the middle of a sentence, then you can punctuate this either with commas either side of the interrupting section of the sentence, or hyphens as we've done here. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to look at concerns the use of coordinating conjunctions. So obviously you would have come across these words before, but you might not know them as coordinating conjunctions. Really, you've just got to memorise this list of 7 words because they're very important when it comes to punctuating complex sentences. So here I have 2 independent clauses. Number 1, I went looking for a flat with my mum today. Independent clause 1, independent clause 2, it was hell. So just remember, these are both independent clauses because they can stand alone as self-contained sentences, and they do both make sense in isolation. What happens when I stick the 2 together with a coordinating conjunction in between? How do I punctuate this? Well, look here, so all I've done is rewrite, well, I've written independent clause 1, and independent clause 2, and I now have the word and in between. How do I punctuate this? Well, I've got a comma in front of my and. Okay, so if you have 2 independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction in between, you need this comma in between your coordinating conjunctions. So alternatively, it doesn't matter which of these words you use grammatically. Obviously, in terms of the sense of the sentence, only some of these fit. So instead of the word and, I could have the word so, and in terms of my punctuation, it would be exactly the same. So it would read, I went looking for a flat with my mum today, so it was hell. And again, it would be a comma in front of my coordinating conjunction there. So just another thing to note here If you don't have the coordinating conjunction, see, these are both independent clauses. They're standalone sentences. In terms of alternative punctuation, so if I didn't have this and here, and I just had the two independent clauses, a full stop in between is a valid piece of punctuation, and so is a semicolon here. Okay, a semicolon can almost be used interchangeably with a full stop. This is something that we'll cover in subsequent videos. Like I said, if you're finding that I'm going through things too slowly, full copies of my notes and exercises are available online. I strongly recommend that you check this out. But this is it for my video, kind of strictly on commas. If you want to hang on for more videos on punctuating complex sentences with semicolons, colons, etc., this will be available in later videos in my playlist. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more tutoring videos. Remember that full notes and other resources are available on my tutoring website at idktuition.com. And if you'd like me to cover anything in particular, please leave me a message in the comments below or on Twitter at TomDavies32.